to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. Right now it is Dum-Dum-Da-Dum-Dum, The Year of the Dresden, and we're covering
Dresden
chapters 14 through 26 of Grave Peril by Jim Butcher. And
I don't know
Brave
why it's
Peril
so hard for me
indeed.
to do the math to figure out what chapters we're covering.
I mean, you can look on our website, Laura, because I do put them up there for each book we go through.
You know what? That's too simple, apparently.
I mean, good for you, but I do the math
Ugh.
on them for all of them, and sometimes even I'm like, what did I write down? And then I have to like flip through and I'm like, divide by 3. Okay, good. I know where I'm at. So, um,
I was like, oh, I have to read through 28, I think, for this. And then I was like, no, Laura, it's 39 chapters in this book.
it's
What is wrong
pretty.
with you?
I always get hung up when you do math where you have to still complete chapter 26 in order to count
Mhm.
it. Like I always forget chapter
Right,
39 counts. And I'm like, oh yeah, you still have to read that chapter. It doesn't just
right.
stop. Math is weird.
Math,
But
math, math.
before we get into through chapter 28, I guess in Laura's mind, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
Still not really reading very much.
Everyone needs a break. It's warm out.
Yeah, you know what? It's been summertime, so I'll just recommend some other favorites that I've
It's
read this year.
summertime.
If the library could give me The Truth of the Aleke, that would be wonderful. I'd love to read that one. But yeah, the Lives of the Ajungo was fantastic.
Okay.
So read that. People, that this is just my quarterly reminder. Lives of the Ajungo, Moses Osei Utami, Utomi. I'm so sorry for mispronouncing his name. Really great book. That's your reminder. Also, go read all Becky Chambers. Just
Good.
just stop what you're doing, people. Read Becky Chambers. All of it.
Okay.
And yeah, so I've been watching a lot of things though, Hannah, and I've watched so much of The Boys.
You
I'm all
surpassed
caught
me
up.
so fast.
I'm all caught up because they're releasing the new season right now.
Yeah.
So I'm through, I think it's 5 episodes already that they've released. The most recent episode, what a wild ride.
Oh.
I did not know what to expect, and it wasn't that.
Mm.
But it was interesting. But I think that the most recent episode literally was just like so much of the boys being the boys. Like as far as
Mhm.
a show, it hit a lot of what you would expect for that show. It was just like shocking and like kind of gross, and yeah, it made
Yeah.
sense. But I will say the people that have been calling for Anthony Starr to get an Emmy, they're very right. This man is terrifying
Oh yeah.
as Homelander, and it just continues to get worse, Hannah, as you go along in the seasons. And this man is a fantastic actor because he's so convincing in this horrible, horrible role. But I will say, I was reading, so I watched a couple of YouTube videos of like interviews with the cast,
Hmm.
and people were commenting on this. No joke at all. They were saying, wouldn't it be interesting if Anthony Starr played a villain? And I'm like,
He
excuse
does.
you?
No,
And
people
people
think
were,
he's like the hero.
I know they
Yeah.
think he's a hero, and they're commenting, like these other people commenting on this, and they're like, are you for real, my guy? Like that he plays a villain.
Yeah.
This is the whole point of the show. He plays a villain. And they're like, no, he's the good guy. And there's literal arguments breaking out in the YouTube comments on some of
Yeah.
these things because there are these people who do think that he is the hero.
Hmm.
And that is disturbing to me because this is a terrifying character. Ugh.
Even if you go to the Wikipedia page, the first sentence is the Homelander is a supervillain and the
I
main
know.
antagonist. Like
How did they not get
people,
it? How did
because people, because like I do think a lot of people liberal media, quote unquote, critics, where they're
Mhm.
like, the media is so liberal, and it's like everything you watch is pretty watered down to the point where it doesn't say anything at all. So I don't know why you're complaining. It's just like I have to actually accept that other people exist, and that goes against my beliefs. So I think sometimes when stuff like this happens, where like Homelander is obviously the villain, but has a lot of beliefs that people
Mhm.
aspire to, they misread the entire situation because the show is not pro
Right.
Homelander at
No,
all.
absolutely not. If anything, it's interesting because it's like the commentary that the tr show is trying to make is actually playing out in real life about the
Hmm.
show.
Yep,
And
exactly.
I find that to be kind of fascinating that it's I don't know, it's full circle,
Yeah.
honestly. It's and it shouldn't be something that I'm somewhat chuckling about, but it's scary and
Yeah.
I can't believe that people are like this. But yes, you're absolutely right, where people are gonna be like, well, they purposely portrayed him like that, and the media twists things around, blah blah.
Hmm.
So yeah,
It's just like telling me with a straight face that this like rapist, awful man is the hero is just
right.
so wild. So
He's
yeah.
a family guy.
Ew.
He believes in family.
That
Eh,
gets back to like the belief that it's like he's such a nice guy, and it's like, oh, he just cheats on his wife a lot and he just
right.
hates women, but like he's so nice, and it's like, are they nice? Like,
Uh,
someone said like, oh, he's such a nice guy, and I'm like, I was talking to someone and they go, oh, he's such a nice guy, and I go, I'm sorry, I think nice is treating me with respect and answering my questions, and that's not what he's doing. What you're saying is he's personable. There is a
right.
difference between being personable, where you want to like someone, and them being nice to you, and that is a difference. And I
Hmm.
don't think people know the difference because
Well,
people
I
want
feel
to
like
like people.
we live in like such a day and age that there aren't enough people who are personable, or as I refer to like the extra personal people, like charming. Like
Hmm.
I encounter people who are maybe like a little bit flirty almost, but not like that
Not
they're
inappropriate. Yeah.
not inappropriate, right? But they're kind of charming.
Hmm.
And it's like uncommon to find people who are able to, you know, handle a conversation smoothly and be charming and quote unquote nice. And people don't know how to react to it anymore because I think over the past few years, 4-ish years, that especially in the United States, it seemed I can't speak for other countries and things that have
Yeah.
gone on, but you may disagree with me on this, even Hannah, in the United States, but it seems like over the past 4 years, a lot of the just common decency in conversations, etc., has kind of gone away. So people are a little bit like have their guard up or quicker to react to things, than
People are
we
definitely
maybe
quicker to react. Like
used to
they're,
be.
yeah. Well, and I never want to say that because I also think like it's
Well,
one of
and
those
also
things where I
it's
was like,
been
maybe
a
we just
very
weren't
difficult
aware of it.
time.
Yeah, it's been a very difficult time. And I do think people have gotten more specific, but like there are ways where I'm like, okay, that's good because it's no longer letting people like be quote unquote charming, but then be terrible. Like if someone's going to be
Well,
terrible to
and
like
this is what I was going
marginalized
to get into.
groups
It's
and
like
stuff,
that
like,
people don't know how to separate someone who is charming from someone
hmm,
who is actually kind and respectful. Like
yes.
somebody who's charming can come in and smile and say something in a nice voice, but it could be something that's incredibly awful.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
because we're just not used to that anymore, like somebody just speaking in a tone and being quote unquote charming and nice,
Yeah.
that we don't know how to react. And so we are quick to label them just like, oh, well, they're nice.
Yep.
And it's like, but they just said a terrible thing. They just
Hmm.
said it in a charming way. So that's not really being nice.
Nope.
But it's just so hard for us, I think, anymore to react to people and also respond, like deal with responses to
Yeah.
reactions that others have to us, that it's just a really weird time. And I think that a lot of these type of situations where you have somebody like Homelander who can smile and deliver something in a way that seems like nice, we're
Hmm.
like, oh, but they're a nice person. And it's like, but
Hmm.
no, they
Nope.
did
They're
something
just
awful.
personable. They're that
Yeah.
you can be very personable and be kind of a dick. So,
Hmm.
um,
And yeah, it's definitely a show where there's no good guy. He's like
no.
I was talking about how I love Carl Urban. He's
Hmm.
a terrible person as well in the show. I mean, I, Butcher is not a great person. He hurts so many people, and
And he's not the
like,
greatest listener. Like he's very much like in
I
it
don't
for
know.
his own perspective. And like there's
And
yeah.
in this season too, this I'm not gonna heavily spoil, but just like light spoilers that we kind of flip things a little bit on Starlight too, that
Mm.
Starlight isn't this bastion of goodness that we were kind of
I mean,
uh,
whoever
uh,
thought she was.
I mean, no, I didn't, but I feel like a lot
Uh,
of people kind of thought, girl next door type
yeah.
thing, that she was going to
Mm,
be like the hero that could do no wrong. And we were getting to the point now where she's also doing bad things,
yeah.
but a lot of it is in response to people doing bad things to her
Yeah.
and just not being able to react in the
Hmm.
right way. And it is an interesting take on how when you're pushed to the edge, you can really just go off and not even realize what you're doing and the
Mm,
ramifications of your actions, and how you can throw things away not only for yourself but a big group of people.
yeah.
So it it's very I just keep calling the show interesting because that's the only way I can think to describe it. The show has so many disgusting things that happen and so many things that I'm just like, "Ugh, not that, not that
Yeah.
of all things." But, and also just like a lot of trauma happens to so many of the
Yeah.
characters, so many like, if you, if any listeners are thinking about watching the show, like, absolutely check out content and trigger warnings. Like, do not just walk into that show. It's a lot.
It's
So,
specifically why I had to stop watching in season two. Like it was like a bad
mhm,
time period. And I literally was like, oh, every time Laura talks about it, I kind of want to get back into it. But then I'm like, but do I? Like
yeah,
it's a little bit of a hard hurdle for your brain to get over when you were like, I
sure.
was kind of like not traumatized, but it wasn't a fun time when I was watching it after season one, where I was like, oh no,
Yeah.
I'm gonna opt out of this show. And I think that that's okay.
I also feel like
Yeah.
you specifically mentioned that it was like right during 2020 or 2021, like that it was a very rough time. And I
Yep.
feel like that would have been maybe the worst time to jump into something like that. The second worst time is maybe now.
I will say that season one wasn't as bad, but like I remember the opening of season two got so dark so fast that I was like, I honestly can't deal with. And like there have been so many spoilers about what was going to happen with certain characters that I found out about because this is a show that I don't mind if I'm spoiled on. We're not going to spoil it for
Sure.
listeners because it's a brand new show. But
Hmm.
like some things that gotten spoiled for me, and I was like, oh yeah, I don't want to watch that, and I just didn't. And so I think that that can be helpful as well. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that makes sense. And I I hope that people going into this show too don't take the wrong messages away from it like a lot of people seem to be doing,
Yeah.
because this is obviously very much a take on a lot of things happening in the United States currently,
Yes.
and especially with politicians and corporations and the
Mm,
media.
yeah.
So I I really hope that this is something that people are able to view this as more of a commentary and a wake up call
Hmm.
rather than, wow, Anthony Starr is
Is
a
amazing. Like,
hero.
ew,
Like,
no, he's not.
what? No,
Go touch grass. Like, go
like,
do something else. Don't watch
this
the
man is
show.
such a good actor. He's convinced you that
Do you ever think he
he's the
feels bad
hero.
about it where he's like, stop thinking I'm the hero? Like, just stop it.
I mean,
Um,
I would think so.
yeah.
I don't know him at all. He seems nice in
I mean,
interviews.
he's
Like,
from New Zealand, so they don't
yeah,
make bad people over in New Zealand, right?
I would hope not. I would hope not. We have Carl Urban is also from New Zealand, so I hope that they're just all great over there. But I I don't know. I would think that Anthony Starr doesn't feel the greatest about some of the reactions to his character, because I would think with his portrayal that he knows what he's doing and
Hmm.
that this is not a great character. Like, he I
Yeah.
can't say, but I would think that he's not like, oh yeah, thanks guys, thanks for supporting me. I am the hero. Like,
You.
no,
Yeah.
that's wrong.
No,
And I
thank
know
you.
that Carl Urban has said in a couple of interviews, like, yeah, Butcher's not a great guy. So
No.
I think that a lot of actors do research into their characters and they're not convinced that their characters are just like the
The
best
best
people
thing.
ever.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
not interesting to play. Like,
No,
if people think a character is the best thing, it's like, well, then they're probably not very interesting. They're probably
no.
really boring. So, yeah.
Right, right. There are very few characters that I watch and I'm like, oh yeah, they're just like a bastion of goodness, but also super interesting. Like that rarely happens.
Right.
It's so much more fun to watch a character go on a journey, whether they go from like a really morally gray state to another really morally gray state, or a character who is bad become slightly better. You know,
Yeah.
I find those stories to be interesting. And I've also seen a lot of comparisons to Breaking Bad, which I have not watched, but
Oh,
so
you've
many
never
people talk
seen
about this
Breaking
show.
Bad?
No, I've never seen it.
Oh, another show where people are like, did you know that Walter White is an anti-hero? And it's like, yes, he's a terrible person. But like, but then people
And
like
that's why people are
froth at the
comparing
mouth
it.
with him. Like,
And
it's
I'm like,
like,
but uh, what is it
but
about these types of characters that I
again, I
don't
think sometimes it's the house effect. Like, I think a lot of people think they're a lot smarter than they
I
are.
thought we knew the house was bad. Apparently not.
But like that's the thing is I think you and I recognize that in context, but you and I just recently talked about how like way back when people like idolized House and then I'm
Mhm,
watching it through a 2024 context and like I loved House too. I'm not like saying I'm innocent in all of this. But like watching it in the 2024 context, I'm like, oh no, he's absolutely terrible. And like
yeah.
Cuddy is terrible because she lets him do this. Like
Mhm.
this is irresponsible. And the things he says and does is like
And like Wilson
horrifying.
also like just
Wilson sleeps with a patient in the first couple of seasons. And it's
yeah.
just like,
Wilson gets away with
no,
so much, honestly,
because he's a
just
quote unquote
because of the nice
caring.
guy thing.
Hmm. And like, it's so weird to watch that show through like this. It's gross in so many different ways. And I remember people like getting so mad at the Cameron character when she leaves her husband because he helped like murder a dictator. And it's like, why are people mad at her for that? He's a
I know.
doctor. Like, sorry for spoilers for House, but like, guess what? They were not good
It's been out
people.
forever.
Um, and so I do think like people are bad at sometimes it's the media literacy that you and I got into where like people do not understand that like you can enjoy a character and you can like a character while knowing that they are incredibly flawed and you shouldn't
Mhm,
like them. Like it shouldn't be
mhm.
like, oh my gosh, I aspire to be them. It's like, I really think this is a dynamic character and isn't it interesting seeing them move in the world?
Yeah.
Instead of I want to be this person, which is what I think a lot of people feel when they like
Yeah.
characters like this, unfortunately, or they think
Yeah,
they're smart enough
absolutely.
to get that
They
character.
they idolize them,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when it becomes dangerous, and I don't like it.
Yep, I agree.
Another show, Hannah, that I've been watching that is almost as controversial as The Boys, but unfortunately is real life. Perfect Match.
Oh, yeah.
The
Laura does do
finale came
that.
out, and what a flippin' train wreck that show is, and all of the people like they had, so I didn't watch it right away when
Mm-hmm.
it came out, and then Netflix, of course, does Netflix where it spoils itself and its own shows because it can't wait like a single day without going and posting like clips from the shows,
Mm-hmm.
which is a little annoying if you're someone who can't watch it the exact day it comes out. But I went on Instagram and they were already like showing clips from the show and they revealed who won the show, which was like, okay, Netflix, that's a weird choice to do that, but you did, and that was dumb. But so then they also were like showing cast interviews, and not a single person obviously left this show with a relationship. Um,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
like we're all shocked.
Shocking. Yeah, I don't know.
Like,
I really thought they could make it. Ugh.
gosh, none of these people could make it. But what they did towards the end of this show was like these couples had all kind of like locked in with the people that they were with, the their partners,
Mm-hmm.
and they hadn't had any change ups in a while. And Netflix was kind of basically like, this is boring. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna
Jeez.
give you a girls' day and a boys' day just to hang out. So what they did then was put a big twist on it. They sent them basically off, the girls off to just a drunken party where they could mingle with all of the boys that had been rejected, and the same with the men,
Mhm.
in order to try and stir up some chaos. And
Yeah.
that occurred. It became extremely messy, and then there were a couple shakeups and everything, and it became just like such a disaster. And especially, like, I previously said that, like, I want to think that people go into these shows with intentions of actually finding love. This show is not the example of that, because so many of the, like, once you're on a second Netflix show with
Yeah.
like looking for love, I don't think it's for love. I think it's for the clout and the dollars for brand representations. But this Harry Jowsey, who I also had in a episode said, like, he says he's going to therapy. I hope he's changing. He just became like such a liar during
Mm.
this episode, where they met up with other people. And the worst part was that he really gaslit this other woman who was at their like boys fun day, who they had kissed when he was supposedly like locked in with this other woman.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gaslit everyone into saying that this kiss didn't occur, and all the boys
That it
stood
did.
up for him and said that he didn't do it and
Oh,
everything,
jeez,
lied.
really?
Yeah. And then his partner, believing him and all of the boys when they came back, she became like attack dog, basically, and went after this other
No.
woman. And at the time when you're watching it, you're like, this doesn't feel quite right. I
Yeah.
don't know about this, because the woman that was, that had claimed that Harry kissed her, Melinda, she didn't seem like she was lying about this, and the things she was saying about Harry seemed like legitimate things that he would say.
Yeah.
But he just kept claiming, oh no, this didn't occur, or whatever. Well, he became like so nervous that his partner was going to leave him over him kissing another woman, that he was upstairs in the bathroom puking
Oh
because
my
he was so
gosh.
upset. And she then like went upstairs, and she like kind of gave it to him and was like, look, what do you want me to do here? What is happening? Like, you
Yeah.
can't lie to me, all this stuff. And he continued to lie and gaslight her,
Oh,
and
jeez.
it was just a hot mess. But she stood by him and believed him, and the show ended, and they obviously didn't win. They shouldn't have won because the two of them were just a disaster.
Yeah.
But it was the funniest thing, because the show ends and they say, well, we didn't win perfect match, but we're still gonna give our relationship a try because we believe that we're gonna, and they're like, we believe we're gonna make it, blah blah blah, blah. And then it just kind of freezes, and the producers put in this hilarious thing that like comes across and it says they broke up 2 weeks later.
Yeah, of course they did. Come on.
But I love that even the producers are just like, you guys are
No.
idiots. Like, this is not working out. And they even were gonna make fun of them. Like, no,
No.
because they were just such a train wreck. And oh,
Yeah.
what a disaster, Hannah.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah. But another actual good show I watched, I have been watching The Acolyte. And if you've watched the
I
first five
am a little bit
episodes,
behind, so don't spoil
okay, I
anything.
won't spoil anything, but episode 5 was excellent.
Oh,
The
good.
creators did not pull any punches. They're not being too precious with their characters. And some of
Ooh.
the best action that I think we've seen in terms of like lightsaber battles in quite a while. Like, very impressive. And I think a lot of people were really pleased with this episode in particular, even fans that are like, the Acolyte is terrible, or
Oh,
even
gee,
the
yeah.
fans that are
I
like,
don't like new things. I just
right,
want the old things.
that
Why
are
are
like
you guys doing
mediocre
this
to
to me?
that feel like the show's like mediocre. Those
Hmm.
fans are even like, okay, I gotta admit, episode 5 was pretty good because they are unfortunately, I feel like it did kind of have a bit of a slow start, but
Yeah.
this episode was very good. And I do appreciate that we're finally getting a few more things that aren't all just like directly related to the Skywalkers,
That's
where it's
nice.
like, you know what? This is supposed to be a very expansive universe. Why does everything tie back to the Skywalkers?
Sometimes you
So
have to just not care so much about a family.
I
I promise
know.
it's
Like,
okay.
it's
Like,
fine if Luke and Anakin are not in this because we can make other things. But
mhm.
this was a very good episode. And again, the battle scenes, fantastic. And again, I'm just going
Good.
to comment on Lee Jung Jae. Amazing acting. I'm so impressed by him for learning English for this role, and then the way that he is delivering. I it's fantastic. I
That's awesome.
cannot get over this man's acting ability. Like, I know that there probably won't be like a lot of award nominations for this show. It's these are not. I feel like Disney Plus shows don't often get like award nominations. They're not like Emmy bound usually at the moment, at
Right.
least.
Yeah.
But this actor does a fantastic job, and he's put so much work and heart into this character. Like, I do hope he gets a little recognition, at least some
Yeah.
articles calling his work out, because he is a standout and really does a great job.
That's
So
awesome.
really impressed by that show so far. But Hannah,
Okay.
that's about all I've got. You and I will
Man.
likely talk about Perfect Match a little more.
Yeah, if you guys, well, in our very late June Patreon episode, we do apologize, everyone. We owe the people over at Patreon a bonus episode who are in the $5 and up. Hannah had a little bit of some personal emergencies going on last month, so things got a little bit delayed, but we should
Not a
be
problem.
doing better in the future. So I do apologize, everyone.
Not a problem. But Hannah, what have you been reading and watching?
What have I been reading, watching, and or enjoying? So I read Jeff Speight's Mystic Reborn, the second book in the series. We just had him
Yay.
on. I really enjoyed this book. I really thought it like came into its own really well in the second book. There's like much more political intrigue. It brings back characters that I didn't expect him to. And I really just love the setup. Like, I think it's he does a really interesting job of like taking characters that you think you normally see in fantasy and turning them on their heads. And so like the beginning of the book goes towards like the back of Avilium where, the gods are leaving Earth and we find out that there are other characters who stayed on Earth and like then they have to go find them and everyone just kind of gets like all the people get shaken up and they get kind of pushed out to different things. Something I also really like about Jeff's work is like the conflict is never between the characters in an uncomfortable way where you're like, oh my gosh, this person really hates this person in this moment. And it's miscommunication. Like everyone seems pretty reasonable where they're like, this is actually what's going on. Listen to me. And then everyone's like, that actually makes sense. And it's kind of fun to read that because it is very like D&D related and very fun. And so I enjoyed it very much. And everyone should go read those books and listen to our podcast episode with him because he's amazing.
Yes.
Um,
Friend of the
I
pod.
I also listened to Walkable Cities: How Downtown Could Save America One Step at a Time by Jeff Speck.
How's it,
This
Jeff's?
Lots of Jeffs. This one is a little bit of an older one, and I could say that like you can kind of feel some of the clunkiness with it. I think it's really interesting. It's an interesting type of book, but I think other books probably do it better if they're a little bit more newer or recent. Because this was first published, I believe in 2012, so it's like 12 years old.
Okay.
And it's by an urban city planner who's just kind of talking about how to like build sustainable living, but like he's really into like bike paths and he's really into this stuff. And I think it's very helpful in context of certain things of like how to make more walkable cities and make cities less car dependent. With
Hmm.
that said, sometimes it feels like he's just like a white man telling the masses what works really well in kind of upper
Yeah.
class areas, which I
I
think
I also feel like a lot of those like this is just me like harping on things because I'm in rural America, but a lot of those types of books fail to recognize that like not everyone can make those type of changes to their cities feasible. Like,
Oh, his is
or
much like it's only for urban cities. So like
oh,
it
okay,
is
okay.
very specifically urban cities. He's not
Because
talking
I
about
feel like
towns. He's
I've
not
read
talking
things
about
before.
villages.
Okay,
No.
I've read things before where they're like, all people should implement this, and I'm like, I'm sorry, it takes me a 20-minute drive just to go get groceries. There's no way I'm doing that on a damn
No, no,
bike.
no. His is very specifically about urban
Okay.
communities. Like he's not talking about anyone in rural America because I think he does recognize that as a city planner that like he's talking to a specific
Hmm.
type. But it's more like here's what's successful in Portland and Chicago and places where people are more willing to bike or like have a close by storefront and like all of those different things. But like doesn't really talk on like well, yes, and there are food deserts in lower economic places, and we need to
Where there's
recognize
still travel required.
yes, and like a lot of infrastructure kind of goes away. And but like he does talk about stuff that could help like some cities where like we don't have like even in my neighborhood there's no sidewalk and that stinks,
Hmm.
but like there's a
Where you
lot
have to
of
walk on the street.
yeah, and but there is
Hmm.
like a lot of foliage. And so it's like, oh, but it's like very cool when you want to go
Yeah.
outside where a lot of places like they've proven that like trees help and you should plant
Yeah.
trees along sidewalks because it's incredibly important for, so that's
Hmm.
interesting, but like I don't know, I tuned out of a lot of the book. It was for a
So
book
this is an
club.
older book. So do they also not mention like electric vehicles?
They didn't really, I don't think he
Okay.
went into that because it's really just like how to build a better downtown. Like it's a very specific
Okay.
view of like, here's how to make cities more walkable. And it's very driven in the like,
So it's
here's,
focused almost entirely on like walking.
it's pretty much walking and
Okay.
like how to use community, like trains, buses, zip cars. He was very pushy about zip cars. Um, and like trying to make sure you're doing that. And then you're also like usually staying in your neighborhood because you're not getting out very much, which is very true. Like I lived in Chicago for years and like I
Mhm.
wouldn't go to different neighborhoods randomly. Like you had to be going for a
Sure.
reason and, because it's just like hard enough to not want to go. But it was fine. I just wish I had read other books instead of this one. Like I was really excited to read it at
It
first and I
sounds like
just
that's like a stepping stone book where it's
yeah.
like you said, where it's like yes
Yes, and
and you
yes.
need more added to it,
He
especially now that
also
it's an older book.
he's also a white guy, so he's not thinking about like safety of women when they're trying to walk
Oh
at
yeah.
night and like well lit areas and things like that.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Have you seen that
Um
thing, Hannah, where like, apparently a woman was like called out for like looking in the mirrors, or not the mirrors, the windows along her sidewalk as she was walking home from work the one day? Like some guy called her out and was like, "Quit looking at yourself in the windows." And she was like, she had to whip around and be like, I am looking to see if people are following me. I'm not
yeah.
full of myself. And I was like, I do that exact same thing. If I'm somewhere by myself in like a city, I look in the windows of the businesses
Hmm.
to be like, is someone coming behind me? But that's definitely just like a man thing. I
Yeah,
feel
men
like
just do
a
not
lot of guys don't
know.
realize like
Nope.
there's certain things that women have to do. And
Hmm.
like you park in certain places or don't go over here or don't go
Hmm.
out past this time because
Don't have headphones in.
yep.
Don't like, yeah. I also listened to Don't Fear the Reaper by Stephen Graham Jones. It's the Indian Lake trilogy, number two. I really enjoyed this book. I think I liked it better than the first one. The first one follows
Interesting.
this like girl who's kind of obsessed with slashers, and then you find out she's kind of obsessed with them because she's been through a lot of trauma, and it's a way to like make herself feel like she's safe. And this book comes like 5 years later when she's in her 20s and she's returning to the town and she's trying to figure out what's going on. And there is more slashing going on pretty much. I really liked this because I think it collectively talks about trauma in a unique way. And I thought like Stephen Graham Jones did a really effective job of building the world out and like coming back to these characters who are at a different moment in their life. Um, and overall, I just had a good time with it. I thought it was a little bit easier to follow than the first one. A lot of times I kept being like, what's going on? Um, and this one was just a little bit easier of a flow. It felt like he was really coming into his own with the characters and everything. So Definitely pick those up. I really like Stephen Graham Jones. The Only Good Indians is like one of the best horror novels I've ever read. And I think this trilogy is also fun. I do it via audiobook. And I think they're really good audiobooks because it's different voices and different things like that. So that's always a really good time for me. So, and then finally, something I'm
So
going to
it's
talk
a
about.
full cast audio.
Yeah, it's a full cast audio.
Are
Uh,
all of his books like that or just those?
I don't know. I haven't done the audiobook for The Only Good Indians. I just read
Okay.
that, but I know that Indian Lake, I can't remember the first one, but this one was, so it was a good time to like listen to it. It felt very
Okay.
good. And I remember enjoying the first one. I was just a little bit confused. Like I kept zoning out and then like not rewinding it, which is partly my fault. But also if I can't concentrate, sometimes I'm like, okay, well, that just wasn't meant for me to listen to as
Sure.
well. People don't read books with their eyeballs as specifically as they think they do either. So
Yeah. I
um
I also feel like I have gotten to a point now where like when I get audiobooks, I will look and see who the narrator is or listen to the
mm,
sample that I didn't used to do that when I first started out with audiobooks.
right.
And I would just kind of plow through them. And now I've gotten a lot pickier where I'll be like, let's see who the narrator is.
Mhm.
Okay, Emily Woozeller, bet.
I like how much you're saying bet lately. And then for final books, Laura, I read Station 11 by Emily St.
Yes,
John
you did.
Mandel, and I adored this book. I really liked this. I did a buddy read, and my buddy did not finish. She read 50 pages and did not like it. She said it
Oh,
was a little
really?
bit too slow for her. Um, but I think it's just one that's like right up Hannah's alley. So I read it and I kind of thought I was going in like, oh, it's a pandemic book. You know, it was written in 2014, but like it it is about a pandemic that like sweeps the nation and kills many, many, many people, or not just the nation, the world. But then it has this unique way of it's really just about the characters. Um, so it starts with this play on opening night, and this famous actor has a heart attack and dies. And then all of a sudden, this flu comes in. But then we have these like flashbacks where we see different people with this actor and how they intersected with his life, and then like how they are during the pandemic often, or like what happened to them during the pandemic. And it's weird layering of showing like community and how we can all touch and affect each other throughout our lifetimes. And also, like, I thought it was a very unique way to read about the pandemic because we follow an actress in a traveling Shakespeare play, symphony. And I just really liked that because I feel like we never really talk about like the arts and what could be lost if people like start burning books and don't have
Yeah.
this, and like what people want to hear or perform, because people still crave like art and expression. And I feel like we've gotten away from that in some of our storytelling. If it's like like pandemic level stuff where people just kind of, if people are obsessed with anything, it's the Bible. So I really liked that this was like, oh, there's a reason that they read and they want to act and they want to perform. And I just really loved all the different characters and how it moves back and forth in time. And it's just, it's really a character experience.
Hmm.
So I adored this book. It
So
was
like a
giving
sci-fi
me,
horror-ish is basically what it is.
it wasn't really because like I mean it's pretty much just sci-fi, I would say. Like there
Okay.
aren't really that many horror elements. I mean there's
Because I always
oh,
consider like The Stand by Stephen King as
yeah,
being like the pandemic novel,
same.
and that is obviously horror.
That is
And
obviously horror with lots of religious undertones.
but I also feel like there's very much like you're mentioning like what happens if there's no art
Yeah,
and no like artistic expression. I do feel like a lot of horror tends to lean into like a
that's
very
fair.
lyrical writing style
Yeah.
and also like things that are being like revealed to characters are often done so in a way that it's like
Mhm.
through song or through like a play or something like that. So I do think there is a little bit of this that goes into horror.
That's fair. No, and I but I would say that this is definitely like lit fic,
Okay.
sci-fi, and post-apocalyptical, because like the only time you get into that is like there's some stuff that's touched on, but it's never deep delved into. I said this is a lot like Piranesi.
Hmm.
because I think it is. I think there are a lot of different
Which,
like
depending on how you read
overarching.
it, that could be
That
extremely
is
horrific.
very, but that's the thing is I think some people would be like, oh yeah, there's so many horrific things that go on. I'm like, yeah, but they're really just touched on, and like the
Yeah.
character seems okay through it all, so that's interesting. But
Mhm.
I just really enjoyed this book, and I can't wait to watch the TV show to see what it looks like. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. It was probably one of my top reads of the year. So everyone go
Wow.
read it because I adored it. I thought it was so fun. So
Glowing recommendation.
I know. And then for
Hannah, you don't
watching,
often have glowing recommendations like this. Like, I feel like am much quicker to be like, this is the best. Everyone go read it. And
I know.
you're a little more hesitant to be like, this book, everyone should go read it.
So here's the thing. Hannah is a person who, like, I know that when I read something, I'm like, I really like this. So if you like the things I like, then you should definitely read it because you would probably like it. But I also never give glowing recommendations because I don't want people to be like, wow, you were wrong. I want to be like, well, everyone
That's
has
fair.
their
I should
own
definitely be like
style.
that more because people take my recommendations apparently a little too seriously, and then I'm I give recommendations, and then people are like, this is a terrible book, and then I feel bad.
Yeah. See, like in my mind, I'm like, look, I think this book is amazing, but I'm sure you could query about 50 people who think this book sucked ass. I literally did a reading, but a buddy read with someone who was like, I can't stand this book. And I was like, oh, yeah, give up on it then. Like, I adore this book. I'm having a great time, but like, why would you make yourself miserable just because
Right.
I liked a book and we agreed to read it together? And she was like, thank you. That was really supportive. And I was like, yeah, the world is like too short for me to get all up in arms because I thought a book was good.
I'm
So,
really big on DNFs, honestly.
mhm,
Like, and I soft DNF things a lot. And I say soft DNF because, like, I will return to
mhm.
certain books because if it's just not the right time for me, I'm not going to force myself through it and hate it
Yeah,
because that isn't fair to anyone. But
no,
yeah, I do feel like the people that are just like, once I start a book, I will finish it. And then they're like, this book was terrible, 1 star. I'm like, but should you have finished it? Like maybe that's just not a book for you and you could have read something else. Like don't force yourself through a Stephen King if you've never read Stephen King and you're kind of an Emily Henry girly. Like don't do that.
see, I am someone who forces myself to read a book, but I'm also pretty picky about books I pick up. Like, I don't think I'm usually picking up books that
You're
aren't
a
pretty
wider
vetted.
reader though,
Yeah.
where I feel like there are people who, when they say like my genre is this or my genre is that, they specifically read those genres all the time because they like them. And
Yeah.
I think that is very fair. I feel like I am becoming one of those people that I'm like, yeah, I have a few genres that I like to read
Hmm.
at the moment, and that's fine. Like I love lit fic, I like sci-fi and fantasy
Hmm.
and like specific kinds of fantasy.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I want to read like thrillers anymore. I'm just
Yeah.
not super into thrillers. And if I'm gonna force myself to read a thriller, it's likely not gonna be good.
Yeah.
So I just feel like sometimes people are a little too, and this is maybe me just projecting. Maybe it's not like too stringent, but it seems like it sometimes when it's like, don't force yourself to do something when you could read a book you like.
Yeah. I think I'm just someone who I'm like, I like it. I'm someone who loves an experience. So even if I'm reading an ass novel, I'm like, this experience is funny to me.
Mhm.
Like, and so sometimes I will read books that I hate just to be like, oh, I'm enjoying the fact that I got to read a book that I did
I
not
will hate
like.
read something occasionally.
Yeah,
Like
that is
if it
true.
enrages me, if something's happening and I'm like, I just have to find out what's going on here because this is just enraging
Oh my
that this is
gosh.
happening.
Whenever I see a stellar review for that The Drowning Woman book, I'm always like, why? I read sections of that book to Laura and Veronica and just hated it so much. The someone shared a book about someone who I think is a good, probably a good person, but I've read two of her books and I hated both of them, so I will not mention it just to like save face. But they were sharing it in like a Facebook group I'm part of, and I was like, "Has anyone read those?" And someone was like, "Oh yeah, I read this book of hers," and I was like, "I'm just not going to say anything else." Just
The
let
other
it
book that I
die
always
there.
think of with you, Hannah, is that Southern Guide to
Oh
Vampires or
God,
whatever.
I
Because
hated
I
that
I
book.
knew that you did not like that one at all. And I see every now and then somebody will read it and they'll be like, this book was great. And I'm like, but was it?
I don't know. I think. and like too many people were like, it was satire. And I'm like, I don't think it was effective satire if there weren't very dynamic people of color in it. I
Yeah.
think that that is not effective then if someone is still existing for the white women around her and it's not
Yeah.
commented on very often.
I
But
also feel like whenever you read at a faster pace than me, but I also feel like whenever you review a book and you're like, this ain't it. I'm like, okay, good. Cross that one off the TBR because I'm like, I'm not gonna waste my time.
right? Like if Hannah doesn't like a book, if she can't find any redeeming qualities, don't read it. So no, there are some books that I've like stopped reviewing because I was like, if I rate that, like I'll rate it the true rating, but if I like review bomb it, like what am I adding? Because people who are reading
Right.
this book aren't going to enjoy my, um. Although I do love whenever someone likes my review of The Drowning Woman because I'm like, vindication. They agree with me.
Vindication.
That one and that awful book that was written by a white woman about a
The Good
tree.
Neighborhood.
The Good Neighborhood. I hate it when I
Mhm.
see that people like that book. I'm like, that is such a freaking problematic book. Stop liking it. That is one, the hill I will die on. Don't read that book. I hated the fact that the opening was like, as a white woman, I thought maybe I'm the one who shouldn't be writing this. But I did. And I'm like,
That's the opening.
that's the opening. Like I went to a talk by oh my, one of like the best women, like the best black writers. Oh my gosh, what's her name? Zadie Smith. She went to
Oh
a
my
Zadie
gosh.
Smith talk, and Zadie was like, "Yeah, I think if you want to write a book and you think like you have a story to tell, you should write it." And she was like, "And then I was inspired to write this book." And I'm like, Zadie Smith does not own you. She does not accept you. No, like that was horrifying. Oh,
That's a
jeez.
choice.
I was so mad when I read that she
I
thought
feel
Zadie Smith approved of her story. So
so.
sorry.
Do you ever feel like whenever people are like, you can write other people, like, I'm a white woman. I don't always have to write just white. If I was an
Right.
author, I don't have to always just write white woman characters type thing.
Yes.
But it's also not me, like, my specific place to write about a person of color's very specific experience. And
Exactly.
I feel like sometimes white people get the wrong idea and they're like, you know what I should write about?
The
The
black
black experience in
experience.
America. And it's like,
You
mm,
should have diversity in your books, but you should also
yes.
have the responsibility to
And
want to write it
it
respectfully.
it makes me wonder like how people get those things crossed in their mind where they're like, you know what? I will definitely write about the black experience as a white person. Like,
It's it's
how
because
did you
there
pick
is
that up?
so little representation of just like black people existing often. Like we don't have that much. And so people's only experience with black media growing up is about race relations. That's
Hmm.
it. So if that's all you know and you start to think like, well, I want to use this person and then you're like, "Oh, I'll write about the experiences that I've seen on television." And it's like also
Also
recognize where
don't.
media is lacking and maybe you
Yes.
shouldn't do it. Like let's not do that. So,
Hmm.
I'll do a little bit more fun. What have I been watching? I've been watching ER lately.
Yeah, you mentioned that last week.
Yeah, I watched a couple more episodes. They have I was watching it at my house and one of my roommates was like, "Are you watching ER?" And I go, "Yeah." And they go, "Banger of an opening song." And I'm like, "It really is."
Banger of an opening
No, it
song.
has like such a good opening. Like it's just like,
I guess I don't know the opening.
oh my gosh, I almost want to play it for you on this podcast right now so that you could hear the ER
I've
opening
never
song.
watched ER.
It's a good show. I mean, like it's just dramatic, but I think it's good because it's showing like different stuff. But
Hmm.
let me share my screen with you and you can
I
cut
don't know
this
why, but
out.
for somebody who likes science as much as I do, I like didn't watch a lot of like doctor shows, and I don't know why, but like all of those like Chicago Med Fire, well, all of
Whatchamacallit.
those, all of them, they really seem like not gonna be watching that.
It's like synthetic.
Okay, I do recognize this. Okay, Hannah's like raving out, listener.
It's a good song. Um ba-dum-dum, ba-dum-bum. uh So I've been watching ER. It's so easy to watch. It's so weird to watch George Clooney as a young man
Yeah, I
who is
forget that
like,
he's in that too.
and he's like younger than us when it starts. And do you ever get like old people blindness where you're like, nope, you have to be older than me? Like anytime I'm watching Friends and Rachel is like, I'm 25. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, you're not. You're
Well,
older
it's
than I
because
am.
we've been, well, that show specifically, I have those moments with where they'll say things I'm like, no. But it's because I was watching it for so long. And like,
Exactly.
I remember, because I can't even remember when, I feel like I was watching it in junior high almost.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of just like, no, you guys have always been like the old cool people. Like,
They're not. They're young when the show starts, like, which is
yeah,
also, I mean, Ross is like experiencing divorce when he's like, what, 27? And it's like, oh
27.
yeah, that is like rough on a person if they're that young,
Hmm.
trying to like restart their life where they thought like they'd had it kind of figured out. But
But like Ross
um
is still the worst. I'm
he is still the
sorry.
worst.
Like,
No, he is a terrible human.
absolutely least favorite character. Like, I can't with Ross.
He's
Like,
so
no.
bad. Like that show is just sometimes there's a couple where you're like, oh, you two ended up together because like you both needed to, I guess, question
Hmm.
mark, because no one else seemed willing to deal with that.
Yeah.
Um,
I
but
will say though that like some of the funniest moments are Ross.
well, he also is a fun like David Schwimmer is a really good actor.
He is
And also like
phenomenal.
very smart in the media because like for people who don't know like he was the one who was like the money maker in the season one where like a lot of
Hmm.
things were riding on him, and he went to like each of them individually and he was like, hey, let's all agree that we will always make the same amount of money no matter what, because you don't
Oh,
know when like the tide could shift. And he was able to do that because he was the money maker of the group at the time, and like they made the same amount the entire time and no
oh,
one
that's
ever
great.
made more than anyone else. So that's like it's just impressive to have someone who's willing to like go to the mattresses for people like that. So I think David Schwimmer is
I
like,
also feel like their careers were so interesting to me, like how they all went such different directions. Like Jennifer
yeah.
Aniston became huge,
Hmm.
and weirdly, like you didn't see a lot of like what's the actor who plays Joey? Um,
Matt LeBlanc.
Matt LeBlanc. You didn't see a
Hmm.
lot of him.
Yeah.
We're starting to see more of David Schwimmer now, but for
Yeah.
a while he was not really in a lot of things except just some voice acting, really.
Right.
Courtney
So
Cox, Cooktown.
the Scream movies, check
I
yourself.
did not watch those.
I
Um,
know, they're
and
my
then Lisa
favorite.
Kudrow just had like a million like
I mean,
side
she's a
roles.
standout, but she's like, yeah, she's like such a good actress though. She's amazing. But yeah, so I've been watching a lot of ER, and then I started watching Dimension 20. I watched like the first half
Oh,
episode of the
okay.
newest season, which is a Dungeons and
I don't know what
Dragons
that
type
is.
show. It's like a role-playing game that they play different types of games on there. It's kind of Dungeons and Dragons-esque, but like they do other types of role-playing games. And this season it is generally hosted by Brennan Lee Mulligan, who is like a pretty
Okay.
famous D&D person. And this season is called Never Stop Blowing Up. One of my roommates watches the show, so I watched the first hour of the first episode with her because it was getting late and it was past my bedtime,
Okay.
which is a huge theme with me. But so they get to play different type D&D games, and this year they're doing Never Stop Blowing Up, which is like a tabletop game where it's a bunch of people in a video store. Like apparently there are still, I think I forget the number, but X amount of video stores in America. And so it's like, oh, this is at one of them. And each of them kind of get sucked into playing like a television show character. So they're playing like two different roles throughout it. They're playing like the original person they made in the video store and then who they become in the movie type thing. And it was a ton of fun to watch. Like it's kind of fun to watch people play on different characters.
Sure.
And one person is playing like a very old woman at a video store and does such a good job. And like watching people play games together and laugh was a ton of fun. And I actually think like knowing you, you would really vibe with this type of thing. Like
Okay.
I think
What's
you
it
would
on?
actually, so it's on, like I think you have to have of course you have to have another
Another
viewing
streaming
platform.
service?
Yeah, another streaming
Yeah.
service. But I think it's called Dimension 20. Um, and it is like they have Dimension
Is it on
20.
Apple?
I think you just have to download like a different app for it. Oh, well, Dimension 20 is the game. Sorry. You should be able to watch some of it on YouTube though. So you could probably check it out on
Okay,
YouTube.
get a
But
vibe for it.
we've been watching like different ones. They also have like a game show one where people don't know the rules of the game show before they start playing. They just have to like try to
I
figure
love
it
that.
out as they go. And I actually think you would really like this type of like channel and everything. So check them out, Laura. I'm sure I burgled like so many different things that I just said. Okay, pretty sure it was called Critical Role, but who knows? Laura will fact check me, check the show notes, and don't at
I'm not
me.
gonna fact check it, but I'm gonna look it up on YouTube.
Yes, do that. So yeah, but I enjoyed that a lot. And I thought it was a lot of fun to just kind of like vibe with the show. And as always, I
Yeah,
keep, and it's very similar to, something I always constantly watch, which is Taskmaster, which
Taskmaster sounded
Laura
similar to
knows.
that.
Taskmaster is also on YouTube, Laura. You could watch all the full episodes of Taskmaster and
You know
become a
what I've been watching
huge
a lot of on
fan.
YouTube that our number one listener, Passa, got us hooked on is like the button and
Oh
then all
yeah.
the cut
Yep.
stuff. Like I love their lineup videos where people have to figure out like who are the mother and their son or whatever. Like I love all of that kind of stuff. Or like pick out the siblings and
Right.
the comments on those videos are spectacular.
Oh, that's
Like there
good.
was one where they had to match up siblings, and I think I might have mentioned this to you before, Hannah, where I was like, I would really like to go on that with my sister because my sister and I are very different heights. We don't look alike, and it would be very interesting. But one of the comments on one of their like match up the siblings was like they asked, how would you dance with your sister if this was your sister? And immediately like the two of them started like hardcore like grinding, and then he like slapped her butt, and someone was like, obviously that's his sister. Like you're not just gonna slap
Yeah.
some random woman's butt. Like,
That's fun.
but yeah, those videos are a lot of fun. And even just like some of them where people are like, why would you think that I'm the person who did this?
Oh my gosh.
Why is he? And then the people who are guessing are like really on the spot, like, um, so I love when people have to like explain like why they made a certain snap judgment or stereotype.
I like that a lot. That's amazing. Yeah, so I think you would actually really like Dimension 20, and I think you would vibe with it, Laura. So I'm recommending that for you specifically. But I
Okay.
also recommend that we get into it because we have about an hour before Laura has a hard out.
Oh yeah, I gotta get out of here.
So we jump in on chapter 14, guys, just so you
Mhm.
know, that's where we're at. Um, and Harry has so many moments in this section of the book where he's just telling people what happened earlier on. And it's like, I told Michael the lowdown on what was going on, and he had
There's a lot of
thoughts.
reflection in this book.
Yeah. And there's so many, like, he's telling Michael what happens with like Mickey and how he had to give him an exorcism. And he says, don't yada yada the Lord, Harry. Michael is so
Yeah,
judgmental
Michael.
about
Okay, so
everything.
Michael really annoyed me in this section where I was just like, my gosh, he's like so condescending. And I don't know if this is like on purpose that Butcher wrote him this way, where it's like he'll say something and Dresden will say something and he's like, well, the Lord would not want you to do that. Or he'd be like, I'm not judging you, Harry. And then follows with something very judgy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
Well,
Butcher, was this
also,
intentional?
I
Like,
was less bothered by that than the furtherance of the plot through the sterilization of Michael's wife, but we'll get there.
yeah,
Yeah.
that made me
Um,
upset.
that made me very, very, very upset. I yelled about it in my kitchen.
Hmm.
So then, they're chit-chatting, the telephone rings. Susan wants to know about a ritual killer that Harry put away recently. His name was Leonard Kravos. And
Lenny
he's like,
Kravitz.
yeah. And he goes,
That's what I
why? And
heard.
she goes, thank you so much. And she hangs up the phone. And then it's like, hey, remember that name that Susan just brought up? He is the most pivotal person in this
Yeah,
entire plot line,
like
just
don't
so
forget
you
that name.
know, because he's a coming back. Um, and so they're kind of he talks to Bob. He has a little powwow with Bob where he's like, hey man, what do you think's going on? And Bob is like, that ghost was able to get through a threshold, Harry, and it was a pretty strong threshold. You don't mess with thresholds. There was a lot of discussion of thresholds in this
Yeah, I
section.
feel like Bob is just the expo dump, but
Yeah,
also like he has to have a couple of gross moments in this chapter too. The first one is where
let
Susan's
me
like,
have sex
"I'm
with
too
Susan.
unsatisfied to sleep here at night, Harry." And I'm like, "Well, I'm too grossed out to continue reading." And then, and then Bob has to have that moment you're talking about where he's like, "I'll help you out if you let me inside your head while you're having sex with Susan." And I'm like, "Okay, wow, ew."
It's so gross and disgusting. But Bob tells him, like, hey, you had to cross over the threshold. So it has to be a pretty strong ghost and probably not one of this world. And Harry's like,
Or like a lot of them.
and Harry goes, oh, so you mean like a demon ghost? You know, when I tried
The
to fight off
spirit.
Lenny Kravitz, there was a demon that we excised. So it might be him. And I was like, why was this so specific and so quick turnaround? Um,
Well, then he says to, I believe he says this to Harry, a woman taking advantage of Captain Chivalry. What are the odds?
I did find that funny. No, because Harry was talking about the fact that this one woman, Lydia, who
Hmm.
it's definitely not her real name, she's at the center of it all, and he's got to
Hmm.
find her because
Can't
this
figure
demon went
it
after her, and she's a loose thread. And so Harry realizes that he can pretty much find her using his bracelet that he gave her,
out.
and he goes on over to Wicker Park and actually has a pretty specific and pretty actually historically accurate portrayal of Wicker Park
Sesame
and
Street.
its growth. Shocking, I know. What?
Sesame Street.
Sesame Street. Yeah, he does describe it as Sesame Street. And
Also, Bob is in Mister, just so we're
oh
not
yeah, I forgot
forgetting
about
that. And he's
that.
like, but don't go in women's locker rooms again. I'm like, oh,
So gross. Um, so yeah, Harry goes on over to Wicker Park. He is looking for Lydia. He thinks he finds her in a warehouse, and he's like, I should probably wait for someone, but it's getting dark soon, so I have to do it all on my own. Also, I have my fiance read me this, and I've now trained him to speak of Dresden as Batman, and it's my favorite.
his sore throat by the end of it.
That's I have to do it, and sometimes I have to switch up the voice because my throat can't take that like graveliness. Where at one point he said there was something where like Dresden says like, "Where's Lydia?" And Paul laughed at himself and did a "Where's Rachel" moment. So it was a lot
I
of
love
fun.
it.
Um, I've been really busy, guys. Sometimes Paul has to read me the book. Um, he owns all of them on audio. I just prefer him to me.
You're missing out on the James Marsters. Like,
Like I get Paul, so it's great. Anyway,
it's probably a lot less smacking, and he's probably not rude and like
he's probably not
doesn't
chewing
with
gum.
his DoorDash while
Yeah.
he's
And so Harry
recording.
goes into the warehouse. He finds Lydia literally lying in a van, and he's like, well,
Yeah.
she might be dead.
Was it okay? I didn't pick up on this. Was it mentioned? Was she naked and just wrapped up in something?
I know that she was wrapped up in something.
Okay, I couldn't remember if she was naked, but I was like, would not be surprised.
She was
But she seems like
drugged.
drugged.
Yeah. But he also like talks about tuning forks multiple times in this book, which is a strange thing to bring up.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's like, wow,
Well,
she's
he
lying in the
uses it to
van.
like point him in the right direction,
Oh,
is
yeah,
what the
that's
tuning
true.
fork is for. So he's
But
using it as like
later,
a compass
a dragon says his name and he hears a tuning fork go off in his head. And I was like, that's a lot of specific tuning
because
fork
he has an internal
representation.
compass. I,
Um, anyway,
of
he
course he
sees
does.
Lydia and he's like, oh my gosh, she's here. Almost like the perfect trap. And he's immediately attacked by the
Mhm.
two vampires we met earlier, Kelly and Kelly's brother,
Kyle.
Kyle, Kelly and Kyle, vampires extraordinaire. And they're both in white again because tennis get up, I guess. And
Yeah.
they have a huge fight. Harry is trying to figure it all out. He gets
And the
licked.
female vampire is
He gets
quivering in excitement.
Oh my God, this is the grossest part, and it bothered me so much because she's literally like on top of Harry, dry humping him. That's
Yes.
it. And then she licks him, and I'm just like, you didn't need to
Mhm.
do this. Like you could have done this with the male vampires licking him. Like, it doesn't need to be a woman. It doesn't need to be sexual. Why are all of these people like literally touching Harry and coming? It bothers me so much.
This my note is very funny to me. It says the vampires attack and he fuegos.
Fuego, fuego, fuego.
It says he gets hit with spit, and the female vampire starts grinding against him. Harry's all turned on and drugged up.
That is exactly what happens. But then Harry is able to have a moment of lucidity and he
Mhm.
pulls down a tarp and there's light in it. Or no, he like bursts, he like pulls down. Oh,
Like the
he
building starts to come down.
he was fighting them and he accidentally like made it so the building was no longer structurally sound. So
Yeah.
it just falls down at an opportune moment and
And then like
burns Kelly.
the cops come and everything, and he's like, "Oh, gotta go. Get back to my
And
beetle."
Kyle screams at him that he'll pay because Kyles of the world always say, "My daddy will hear about this."
Well, and in
so,
this, I'm like, what happened to Lydia? Did I miss that?
no, she's in the van. Like they sped
Oh,
away and
they left with her.
Yes. But also, again, guys, Lydia was just kidnapped, drugged, and missing. And for the next at least 10 chapters, Harry does not give a shit about it. Like he's kind of interested in the mystery of her disappearing, but this drugged and stolen woman, he
That
couldn't
says
care less.
everything about a man who is Captain Chivalry.
He couldn't care less. She is. I want everyone to think every 5 minutes or so when I'm going through this for the next half hour, because we will have to stop at some
But
point.
he has a streak of
that-
chivalry a mile wide.
He has a streak of chivalry a mile wide, and a woman is missing. In all the events of this novel, there is a missing woman that we know was actively abducted by vampires.
But
She
the
just can't be
question
trusted.
I have is, why the slut act?
Hasn't she heard of AIDS?
I don't want to get an STD. I'm not gay.
Although he later does not deter people from thinking he is a bi king. So I
Also,
guess
he says it
bare
so
minimum.
sarcastically that it's just like annoying, because I'm like, yeah, you're being a jerk about it now. It's
don't
not
know.
even like a disguise. I feel like he's just being a jerk. Like
Harry
ugh.
Dresden bi king, Laura.
I don't know. I don't believe it.
So anyway, he doesn't remember how he gets home, but Mister's like trying to take care of him, and he does not remember that Bob is in him. So
Yeah.
he's like nuzzling him, trying to keep him up. And so then he kind of passes
like,
out.
Going in and out of a nightmare, basically.
Yeah. Where he's like turned on, but like, oh, I could have this drug in me forever, and it's so amazing, and I love it. And he starts thinking about Malone and Lydia. They're both attacked by a nightmare, and da 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 da. And then he has a nightmare.
And then Michael.
And then Michael. Oh yeah, Michael with like getting killed or something. I forget.
It's like them fighting. It's like their previous fight, basically, but it goes a very different direction.
Oh, yes, that's what happened. So Harry has a flashback to fighting off Lenny Kravitz. I will only call him Lenny Kravitz now. Thank you for that,
That's
Laura.
what my phone autocorrected too. My notes app.
So yeah, he remembers when they took down Lenny Kravitz, and he had been murdering many, many young people. And so they have to go in and take him out, and he's working with this demon. And they are able to, and Michael steps in and kills the demon with Amarachius. But Harry starts remembering it differently, where all of a sudden
he's like
the demon
trying
is like
to fuego,
overtaking them.
and he can't reach his power.
He can't.
No
Harry can't-
fuego.
Harry can't fuego. No fuego. No bueno. Okay.
These words have power and mine have none.
And so the demon is just laughing at him as his fuego is not working. And the demon starts to like eat him pretty much in his guts. It sinks into him. And then all of a sudden a gray tabby with a bobtail bounded out of nowhere and like slashes his face.
He like
and so
wakes up puking.
he screams. He like follows Bob downstairs because like Mister has him go back into the skull. And Bob is like, hey, the nightmare was able to get into your nightmare, and it was able to eat part of your power. So now it is part of you. And Harry's like,
which is
how?
actually a scary thing.
It is very effective. I do like the demon monster in this. I think that is a very good demon monster.
Honestly, Hannah, when I was getting towards the end of this section, I was like, if we could pull all of the misogyny out of this, This would be a great book.
I had a random rant where I was like, it sounds like when they were taking out Lenny Kravitz, Murphy had done a spectacular job at her
Mhm.
job. Like, it sounds like she did great work. Why didn't we get that book before this book? Like,
Right.
why did we have to have another white male be inserted into this book to help Harry in this book? Why couldn't it have just been
Because we've
Murphy?
already heard enough stories about Karen Murphy
She's a
saving
good
Chicago.
cop. She saves Chicago. She picks up the phone
She's
and
the only
dials
reason
Murphy
Chicago's still
or
standing.
Dresden. Oh God, that's the problem. Is like we're told so much about Murphy, and I'm like, you could have done an effective job of like showing us this story and then moving
Absolutely
into
not.
the nightmare. But no, we just get told that Murphy did a really good job with the demon, who we are going to see battle Michael for the rest
Yes,
of the book. Great, happy to
absolutely.
be here, I guess. Um. And so Bob is kind of like, oh, hey, that's probably how the demon is entering. They're like getting into nightmares and they can get around
Mhm.
things like all of your safety shields around the
Mhm.
apartment. And they were able to get into Malone's house. And they realize that the demon is probably, or the nightmare
Because
is
it's
probably
like
the
they mention
ghost
it
of
as
the
like dream
demon.
bubbles,
Oh, yeah.
basically,
Uh, and
that appear at like the border of the Never Never. And so then when they have these bubbles, it's like they just kind of like pop through. And I honestly thought a lot of this was very imaginative and creative
yeah,
writing on Butcher's part. That's
I
why I
do
was
think,
like, why did he have to have so much like firm nipple talk? This
why
really
couldn't
takes away
Murphy
from
be
a
here?
really great fantasy story.
Right? And so Bob is like talking him through things. He and Bob are kind of having a lowdown where they're talking about the bubbles. They're talking about how the vampires probably have to be involved because
Mhm.
Bianca had her lackeys go after
Yeah.
Lydia, a woman who was actively missing and kidnapped. And
And Bob's like,
so
just go kill him. And Harry's like, you can't just go around killing people. And I'm like, why is he occasionally like the morality police? And then other times he's like, you know what, little girl? I'm going to go kill your dad.
yeah. Are you gonna kill my dad? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe
I
today, maybe
probably,
tomorrow, but probably.
probably
Uh
he's probably dead.
Harry also tries to start a fire and he is unable to do so when we find out that the demon ate a part of Harry
Mhm.
and is now more powerful
And I
and
love that he
took
says,
some of
you are
Harry's
what you
power.
eat.
And Harry is confused because he doesn't know how he, Lydia, and Mickey Malone are all related.
But
And Bob
this
goes,
is the
she's
coolest
kind of
part
an
though.
oddball.
The coolest part of all of this, though, is that Butcher mentions that like you can ghosts can only deal with
Oh,
things
yeah.
related to their deaths, which is a neat detail. So then, what these ghosts are doing is like getting revenge against all of the people connected to their own deaths, which I thought was fascinating.
Well, and it was also why like Agatha Hagglethorne had very little power, except when she was like in a
With
nursery or with
yes,
abusive
around
husbands. Like she had to
babies and
be
stuff.
in a specific time area. So ghosts
Hmm.
can only affect certain like allocations around them. And so Lydia is the uncommon factor, but Harry does know Malone, and he does know that he and Malone went after Lenny Kravitz with Michael and Murphy. I just like seeing
Damn you,
Laura.
autocorrect.
No, it's great. I love it. I'm really happy I don't have to say Lenoid Kravos. Lenny Kravitz is so much easier to say, so thank you, Laura. But then Harry starts doing equations and he realizes that Murph is in trouble. So he calls her and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna be there in 20 minutes." And she
Let me
goes,
grab my Scooby-Doo lunchbox.
and Murphy goes, "You're going to be late? You already told me you would be here in 10 minutes." And then he's like, "You spoke to me on the phone?" And so then Harry freaks out. He grabs his Scooby Doo lunchbox and he gets some sand from the kitchen of Mister's litter box
And a
uh,
blasting rod.
and a blasting
I
rod.
just love that it's called a blasting rod too.
And he just whips out in the blue beetle that's not blue. And so then he goes in, and this is a comedy of errors where he just keeps
Mhm.
telling people, like, "Have you seen me?" And they're
Yeah.
like, "You just went down there."
Because
And
the ghost is masquerading as him is what the situation
because
is. And
oh,
so
yeah, sorry, that was a terrible explanation on my part. So he like tries to get past Rudolph, who still hates Harry because of
he's
reasons.
well, and
Uh,
Murphy, he walks out of Murphy like screaming she's been tortured and her soul is gone, which is
Yeah.
terrifying. And then Rudy's like, I'll kill you if you don't save Murphy. I'm like, get out of his way.
Well,
Rudy, stop.
and so they like get her medical help, but she is still mostly not there. She is
Yeah.
like screaming internally. Harry is able to turn it off, but he's like, no, she's still screaming. She just can't really do it.
And they're
Um,
they're not sure. They're like, she's just like kind of sleeping, like maybe in a coma. We're not sure
mhm.
what's going on.
And so he asks Rudolph to get Lenny Kravitz's book from him because it's in evidence. And if he knows the name of the demon, it could help Murph.
Like,
And
those
Rudolph is
names have
like,
power.
you could do that? And he's like, yeah. And Dresden is very angry. Um, and he and Rudolph says that he will kill Dresden if Murphy gets hurt. And Harry goes, I think I'll let you.
Because I care more about Karen Murphy than anything.
Because Karen's the best damn
She's the
police
best damn thing
officer.
that has happened to Chicago in years.
You gotta know that Murph is my best friend, even though I really only care about Michael. Okay, I am Batman.
Him and Michael. Ugh, puke.
Yeah. And so then he has to go charging to Michael's
To Michael's
house to
house,
save
and
everyone.
Charity's
And
gone
Michael is just covered in children. Just they're falling all over him. There's a baby
because
with a
Catholic.
bottle, and his wife is 8 months pregnant, and just so much is
Because
going on
Catholic.
because Catholic. And he's like, and I hated this because like he's it looks like he was just in the room, but Michael
Mhm.
comes out with the baby and he's like, oh, the baby is fussing. And then Harry is like, where's your wife? And he's like, I don't know. And Harry finds a note and he goes, pregnancy cravings. I'm like, yes, that's how this happens. Okay, sure.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And so they go driving after her to the local bodega. Oh, well, they're about to leave, and Michael's
Mhm.
like, I can't leave the kids. And then there's a knock, knock, knock on the door, and divine
Yes.
intervention showed up because there's
Father
Father Fort
Fort
Hill,
Hill.
who is the best babysitter. His car broke down, and he was like, I just wanted help. Oh, wait, you need a babysitter again. And
And I was like,
Mike
why does this priest keep appearing? I don't know how to feel
Because
about that.
because he is the babysitter, Laura. I don't know what you're
Okay.
talking about. Anyway,
No.
so they run into the bodega. They're they're like running around looking for her, but then Harry
Mhm.
sees her being dragged into a cemetery after he has to pay a woman to tell her where a woman was abducted.
Yeah, he's like,
Again,
have you seen me with any pregnant women?
and the woman is like, "What? Did your wife get with your brother?" And then he has to pay her like 15 bucks when this
Yeah.
other woman has been abducted. And she was like, "Well, she seemed fine, just annoyed." But then he leaves the room and like Charity is being ripped by her hair into a cemetery
Yeah.
by a Harry Dresden lookalike who looks exactly like he did when he took out Lenny Kravitz.
Mhm.
And then Harry does this weird thing where he's like, Michael, let's get out of here. And Michael disappeared in this tiny bodega and we can't find him.
Here's the other thing. Michael disappears a lot, and I find Michael sketchy, even though he's like the best person that Harry has
He's the
ever met.
but he's the fist of God, and Harry is the gum on God's shoe, so it's fine.
Okay.
Um,
I don't
so
know.
Harry starts going through the graveyard, trying to get to Charity. And oh, there is a moment where Harry like screams at Michael earlier on
Mhm.
with all the kids where he's like, the ghost is gonna go after your family because that's who you care about the most, and
Yeah.
that's how to get to you. Why did Harry know that? Reasons, but it also is a huge plot point when later Harry's like, ghosts don't think like that. I think like that. I'm like,
Yeah.
what's happening here? Um, so
He talks about like
Harry,
fences around cemeteries though, which I think is like kind of like a horror like lit fic type moment that I picked up and I was like, oh,
yeah,
I kind
right,
of dig that there's always fences around cemeteries to keep it's not to keep people out, it's to keep
to
things
keep the
in.
spirits
And I was like,
in.
you know what? I kind of like that sentence. That was neat.
And so he finds Charity, who is like being attacked by this Harry Dresden, and she
Yeah.
looks at Harry and she goes, what? So I'm like, oh, so in your mind, this was just Harry Dresden doing all these
Yeah.
things to you, and
Like,
you
of
thought
course he's as awful as I thought he was.
totally tracks. He's not Christian. Like, why did that happen? Like, I know she doesn't like him, but it sounds like this man is being purely evil and trying to rip the life force out of her.
Yeah.
And she was like, fair enough.
Accurate.
Sounds like an accurate portrayal of Harry freaking Dresden. And so
And he has his
he
dead mom amulet and he puts that on.
oh, and he fuegos, and the nightmare is like wizard, and he goes demon. I responded, and they kind of have this huge standoff where
Hmm.
the nightmare is like taking chunks out of Harry. He is kicking
Hmm.
Harry while he was down, and there is just a lot going on. And Harry can't get up; he's been knocked down, and Charity is about to be overtaken. And who shows up? But Harry's godmother.
Leah is
Sh-
there.
She is able to get into the real world, and this is scary for Harry because she had never been
Hmm.
able to before.
I will say that at this moment, in the audiobook, Marsters does a terrifying laugh that is Leah's, and I was like, this is the best performance that he's done in the audiobook so far.
Oh, good.
Or are these creepy laughs?
Perfect. And so Leah tells Harry that she will help him, but he has to promise to come with her tonight. And Harry is like, how am I going to get out of this? But he agrees.
So did
And
you also hate how weirdly sexual his descriptions of the godmother are and
I mean,
how
she's a fairy, so I'm just like,
it's
well, people pretend
I
fairies are
guess,
just
but it makes me
overly
just like
sexual.
uncomfortable, I guess, especially because it's like he kind of still talks about her from the context of like knowing her in the past. And I'm like, you were a teenager, and it seems like that whole thing was inappropriate, and I don't know how to feel about it.
I think it's effective storytelling with showing like how much Harry has been through, where like he
Yeah,
probably doesn't recognize how deeply dark that is, but we as the reader recognize it, and that's
yeah,
helpful for making him a little bit more likable. But he does agree to it, and all she does is she's like, "It's all around you. That's how
yeah. And I
I'll
was like,
help you."
what
And it's like,
useless
"That's so."
information.
And then Harry
He's like,
was like,
dead bodies are all around me.
and he's like, "I
Okay,
would have figured it out myself," because he realizes that it's raining, guys,
it's
and he
water.
jumps on the nightmare and he pushes him through a running riverbed, and that diffuses the monster. But also, Charity is not doing so hot.
Hmm.
She said she thinks her water broke, and they have to rush her to the hospital. Which but before that,
Like Dresden
Leah,
uses Michael's sword too.
yeah, Leah says like, you have to come with me. You and I made a deal, and Harry reneges on it because he says he needs to help everyone
He's like, I gotta beat
first.
this nightmare first. Like this ain't happening yet.
And so then he tries to hit Leah with Amarachius, which is not how the sword works,
Hmm.
because it cannot be used to try to get out of deals like that. So she is able to turn it on him, and she steals Amarachius from Harry. And she says she will come back for him. It also says she wants to make him one of his hounds. So not great. And then this is my least favorite part of the novel.
Same.
Because Michael is literally a father who, in this entire next section, could not give a shit less that he has children or a
Hmm.
wife he should support, because, quote unquote, he made sure they were well provided for. And Harry is much more important because he has so much life to live, and he
Yeah.
could get married himself and have babies himself. I don't know how that relates at all. And it's one of
It's
the worst.
not connected at all to this.
And this is also a moment where Michael and Harry have a little heart to heart where trigger warnings abound for people with pregnancy issues. I'm very sorry. I'm gonna just quick do this, but like I find this part horrendous. We find out that Charity was hurt during this. The baby needs to be able to last for 36 hours, or he may not make it. And Charity is no longer able to have children, which makes the Michael sections that much more like
At
abhorrent.
this moment, it's unsure though. They're unsure what's going to happen with the baby, and
Yeah.
also they're like, she might not be able to conceive again. And I don't know at this point the direction that this is going to go with her health, but it's horrendous either way because if this is what actually happens and she becomes infertile from a like physical attack, that is awful to include
Yes.
this. But it's also awful, honestly, in my opinion, to include this moment, kind of dangle that as a possibility, and then pull it away later if we get a miraculous pregnancy again. Because that is like if
And
we have a flashback at the end of this book where it's like this record scratch and Dresden's like, and
now she's
Charity,
pregnant.
well, she and Michael are welcoming their new little bundle of joy. I'm gonna be
Number
like, you know what?
7,800.
this sucks.
Well, and it sucks because, like, literally, this woman has just gone through a huge, deep trauma. She may not be able to conceive again. It sounds like they wanted more children. And Michael just leaves. Like, he just
Hmm.
pieces out because, quote unquote,
Hmm.
Harry needs help and he's doing it for the greater good. And the way, like, we try to make sure Michael is this bastion of goodness when he just, like, legitimately says he is willing to leave his family
Right.
behind to die for the common good is ridiculous. And just, like,
Yep.
so insensitive to this character who all we know about her is she's really bitchy to Dresden and we've just put
And
her
a baby
through
maker.
all of this. Like I cannot understand why you would make this character to only further the plot for Michael. Like you have not killed her, but
And
you have like
honestly, like this is so frustrating as a woman to read
yeah,
these characters like this. Like these, like in this book specifically, the women only are existing to further the men
the men's
characters.
storylines. Yeah.
So, and like, there's nothing to this woman besides just like baby maker. There's nothing
Yep.
to some of these other women except like sex toy or like uh hard nipples. And it's just like, okay, what? You
Yeah.
know what women love to read about? Trauma that happens to women
And I'm
where
sorry, I'm so
they
sick. I know this was early 2000s, but I'm so sick of reading about women's trauma in childbirth. Like we know it's
yes.
dangerous and let's not try like be realistic about it, but don't use it to further the plot of male
Hmm.
character storylines. It's gross. Um so that's our rant on that because we both feel very
And
strongly about
also
it.
just like tangentially, like women should not have to be like physically harmed or abused in order for plots to move along. Like
Yeah.
I believe it was author Louise Holland that recently like said something about like be be more creative with your writing. And I was like, thank you. So
Mhm.
that was a really good moment for her, and
Mhm.
I totally appreciate her saying it.
Yep, I agree. And so they also kind of have a powwow about Leah taking the sword from Dresden, how she was able to do that. And it's like a huge, scary thing because she
Yep.
was able to gain power in the real world. And the way they had even footing before was she was always stuck in the never, never. So Harry is in deep, deep trouble.
And this
He's
is where Michael's like, not to judge, but like, why are you even caught up with this guy? Like, or this godmother? Seems a little
and he-
sketchy.
and he's like, I didn't pick her. My mom did. She was
My
in.
mom was a wizard, and my and I'm like, wait a minute. I thought the dad was
She
a
was.
magician.
He
Yeah,
was a magician, but he doesn't have powers. He's
yeah.
just a
And so the
magician.
mom has powers, and I was
Yeah.
like, my whole
And she
experience has
died
been a lie.
early because, moms be dying, I guess. Literally in this book.
So then he
So
went on to like talk about his whole experience with Leah, basically, which is not that long, which it's just
no.
like a stupid young person made a deal where he was like, I need to kill Justin, and Justin's really tough. Can you give me some power? And she's like, yes, but you have to give me your soul.
Hmm.
And he's like, okay,
And
deal.
he's been fighting with that ever since because he's
Yep.
such a stand-up guy.
Hmm.
And so then they decide they have to figure out how to do this, like take care of this nightmare because it's going to keep coming after them. But Harry also realizes that nightmares and ghosts are stuck on like simple tasks. So
Yes.
they would have never known to go after Charity. And
Yes.
so he's like, so someone must be pulling the strings because they're the ones who sent the ghost after his wife. And it's also like, okay, well then did we need to have that? Like, couldn't it have like we
Hmm.
didn't need this entire section that if ghosts just go after people that they know of,
Right.
weird focus. So anyway, they're about to do some power to and Rudolph also brings Harry the book, but he warns him that he has to destroy it if he uses it because internal investigations is on them for something, but he can't tell him
Hmm.
what, but it's going to be coming out soon. And
Which
it's
was
something
so
to
shady.
do with Lenny Kravitz. So you have to destroy the book. And I'm like, I feel like don't destroy the book, Harry, just in case
Yeah.
Rudolph
Like,
is trying to
how
set
about
you
you
up.
hold on to that?
Don't do anything with it. And
Don't
so
fuego it.
don't fuego it. Can you fuego right now? Can you even fuego?
Like, there's no fuego.
No fuego, no bueno. And so Harry starts a little summoning circle, even though his powers are questionable at this time. I did like
Mhm.
this part because he said he got white for protection and because they're the cheapest color at Walmart. That is a good ad of of Harry.
Some of these details like this, I'm just like, oh gosh.
Yeah. And so then Harry starts calling for the demon named Azor Thragle, Azor Thragle, and he like starts fighting with it sort of
Mhm.
and he
They're just
feels
like
it
arguing basically, and it's trying to like
it's
grab
telling him to
hold of him.
release him and it's going to kill him. And so Harry feels the aura of whoever did this. And then he is able to bind the demon to only be able to come after Harry instead of
Hmm.
anyone else so that he can keep everyone protected. And Michael immediately is like, what a dumb idea. It should kill me.
How
I've already
dumb.
had my children. And it's like, I hate this. This is
And I'm
terrible.
like,
Um, so anyway, Harry is like, well, we have to go to a party because I know that the vampires are involved with this, so we gotta get to the bottom of this.
mhm.
And so they go to the vampire ball, and we
Not
find
before
out,
Michael says a quick prayer.
oh, I forgot about that. Uh, and Michael has to come as Harry's date because he has the truck.
Hmm.
And they both walk in, they meet a vampire from
Can we just
the
mention though that Harry is dressed as like a corny vampire?
Well, I mean, it's a big reveal. Like, we don't know
Oh,
what he's
okay.
dressed as when he first walks in. He meets a vampire named Thomas, and Thomas lets us know that there are three types of vampires. Guess what type they are? They're white, black, and red. And I said, I bet the black ones are the evil guys. And then he said, well, the black people aren't really around anymore. And I was like, perfect. No notes. First draft of the black, white, and red groups. Got it. And then they talk about the white council group, or not the white council, the white group of vampires, which is Thomas's group, and they're all dressed in white. And then Bianca's group is the red group, which I was like, oh, you mean red equals sexy and horny? Great.
Yes.
I'm so glad we have colors to identify these people's details in the first draft. Um, and so Harry, there is a funny moment where like Thomas, the white vampire, is like, I'm really vibing with you, Harry. And Harry is like, don't talk to me. Don't use he goes, can I call you Harry? And Harry goes, no, you may not. And I was like, that is actually very funny. Thank you. Um
I will say though, in this chapter and like the chapters that follow, every single description that Dresden has of a woman in this makes me want to puke because it's
okay,
all like about like flower petals cupping their breasts, their beautiful breasts, the purposes of their legs. She wore it well, like
again,
hard nipples.
my fiance's been reading this to me and he describes a man as like being very like attractive. And this is also where I said, oh, Harry Dresden by King. And he goes, wait, we just read about how a man is hot. How long until a woman is hot? And I was like, within the next 7 sentences. And it was two. So
Yeah,
2 sentences later, it was like legs as like legs for days walked out of the car.
but that's not what their
Uh,
purpose is for.
Oh God, I hate when you read stuff where it's like, I knew what I could do with those. Ew, don't
Yeah, I
say
hate that.
that. That's gross. It's like one of those when you're reading a sex scene and someone uses like they're like, yeah, daddy. And I was like, I didn't need to read that. I was
Puke,
good. That was not for me. Thank you.
puking.
So anyway, he meets Thomas. He tells Thomas that he may not call him by his government name. And they go into the party and we find out that Harry's dressed as a cheesy vampire
Yeah,
and Michael is dressed as the Fist of God because that is what he is. The vampires start like following Harry around.
they're kind
Um,
of just surrounding him basically
yeah.
because like Bianca basically is just like, you have my permission to just go after this guy, like lick him, get your spit on him. We need to drug him.
Well, she was like, but he is still bound by the rules of hospitality, so they
Hmm.
can't do anything like overt. And so
Hmm.
they're trying to be sneaky snakes about it. But there's also a bunch of like passed out people on the ground who are dressed in
That they never
black.
questioned until they find out
This
that
was the
the
dumbest.
wine is indeed poisoned.
So anyway, like I'm just there. It's a party. There are some people dressed in black who are like lying on the ground who are obviously identified as humans. And Harry thinks no notes. This is just
Yeah.
weird stuff that's going on. And then he meets up with Kyle and Kelly, and they hand him wine. And you could tell Harry is a white man because he does not question this
Yeah.
at
Nope.
all.
No
And
questions.
he toasts to hospitality and drinks it on down. And
Hmm.
Michael's like, I'm not going to touch that because Michael knows better.
Hmm.
And then someone comes up to him and or Thomas comes back up to him and he's like, hey, they drugged the wine. That's why all these people are passed out. And Harry's like, I should have known. And I'm like, yeah, you should have known. What are you talking about? This was, again, Harry is terrible at detecting sometimes. The clues were all there,
And the
Mr.
thing was that
Snowman.
the reason behind like poisoning the wine was then it was still an act of hospitality, quote unquote, because they weren't specifically targeting Dresden.
Well, it's
Hmm.
vamp venom, which is just supposed to make them lethargic. So it's not going to
Yep.
kill them. It just like turns them on again. Also, how did Harry know that it was meant for him then? Like, why wouldn't you drug? If you knew humans were coming and you are vampires who want to suck the blood out of willing participants, wouldn't you drug them anyway? I thought it was so weird that Harry immediately went, well, I'm the main character, so this was meant for me. Where I was
I
like,
mean, it's
actually, it
all about
makes
Harry.
sense.
He kind of always assumes that it's about him.
But it
Even when
made
he's like, Chicago is saved by Karen Murphy,
it's
but
still
because
about
of
him.
me.
But it made me so mad when I was reading it, where I was like, why would you think that that's about you? Like, this feels like it isn't about me. This feels like it isn't about me.
I
To
love Crazy
bring it to
Ex-Girlfriend.
Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Anyway, so Harry's now drugged. He makes himself vomit, but he's still doped up.
Hmm.
And
So they
he's
kind of
trying
like
to
look around and
he's trying to see who has a similar aura to what he felt in his summoning circle. It's not Thomas, it's not Kyle, because it would not be Kyle. And then he thinks it's either like someone who's not dressed up as a, red vampire. It can't be the people in black because they are humans. So it has to be someone. So they're like, well, we have to go see Bianca, a guy who's not, and the two other guys who are dressed in costume garb. One is dressed up like King Lear, I think it is, or someone from Shakespeare, and one is dressed up like a gladiator. So they go over to talk to the gladiator, and he says that he is in an authentic gladiator costume. And we find out that he's a dragon.
which
And
I thought this was cool.
this was very cool because Harry's like, are dragons supposed to be big and scaly? And he's like, well, this is dragons are whatever they want to be. And then we find out that Michael slayed a dragon, and
Hmm.
the dragon goes, I thought you'd be taller. And I liked that. I thought that was
Yeah.
very funny.
Well, and
And
his name is like Mr. Pharaoh or something.
yes. And uh Harry is like shocked at this dragon. He is very powerful. He's able to say parts of Harry's name and like knock him to his knees.
Yeah, he uses like this force and it just
Yeah.
like it's super effortless for him.
And Harry is able to like break some of the force, but he
Hmm.
also realizes that it can't be this guy. So he's like, well, we
Yeah.
have to go see if it's Bianca or someone else, or else we're like up shit creek because it can't be one of Bianca's minions. They're not powerful enough. And then someone seems to be coming at Michael, and they go to fight them off,
It's a red cloaked figure.
dressed up
Who
as
could it
Little
be?
Red Riding Hood, and it is Susan because Harry didn't bring her as his date, so she had to copy the invitation. And he's like, Susan, what
Because
have
she
you
needs a
done?
story.
And she's like, well, you wouldn't take me, so I had to take myself. And then we find out that she's not governed by the rules of hospitality. So,
Hmm.
Little
They
Red
can
Riding
eat
Hood,
her.
a wolf can eat you up. And thus ends the second third of this book.
Hannah, what'd you
Joy,
think?
I really like the ramping up.
Hmm.
I do feel like Butcher is hitting his stride, but I really hated the parts that I hated,
Yeah.
such as the trained men of women. And again, I wish we had
Yeah.
gotten a book where
Like
Murphy
honestly,
was useful.
if we removed all the misogyny and like trauma to women from this book, like
Good book.
fabulous.
Yeah. But
It's unfortunate that that kind of stuff has to like bring it down so much.
and it is the parts that are harder to ignore,
Yeah,
especially
exactly.
with the charity stuff of it all.
Hmm.
So, that's just our perspective. And join us next week as we finish the final third of this
Yeah.
plot. Laura has already read it, and as usual, Hannah is behind on her homework. So, I will shoot off and
It
start reading.
is interesting.
But if you want to follow along, please make sure you're following us on all the social platforms at OWWR Pod. You can check out the reading schedule, as I said, at
Because
ourpod.com.
Hannah hasn't, Laura hasn't.
And if you ever so choose, please rate, review, and subscribe. That is a great way to make sure that you're getting into our podcast, or tell a friend. And
Yeah, we
again,
appreciate you sharing with a friend or just listening today.
And we do have $1, $3, $5, and $10 Patreon deals. You can support us in any way you can, even if it's just rating, reviewing, and subscribing or telling a friend. But that money does go towards our overhead costs. So we are always happy that people are
Always
there to
appreciative of
support
our
us.
patrons.
And we promise we will get you your bonus episode.
Yes.
This month is not reflective on how we feel about you. It is just Hannah is behind on things. So we do apologize.
Life's
and we
been
will get back.
lifing.
It has been so lifing as Laura and I discuss things like maybe I could come help you remodel your home, just little stuff. But with that said, we are just getting in under the gun of when Laura had a hard out. So guys, we did it.
We did
it. Harry Dresden
We completed
is saying
the Dresden Files. Just kidding.
Harry is saying fuego, fuego, fuego. Off with your meeting. So
and we're saying no fuego because we're out of here.
No fuego, no bueno, and goodbye, everyone. Adios. So, bye.
Bye.